Hi, I'm Lisa, and I am the campus dietitian at Northwestern. And today we're going to talk about mental clarity and brain health, which is a topic that I think is really important for everyone. There's a lot of books written about it right now, and we're just going to jump right in. And these are the 6 areas of focus I'm going to cover today. Some of them are going to be really brief. As a dietitian, I'll probably cover balanced diet and exercise a little bit more. But also touch on all of these. So mental workouts, balanced diet, exercise, just managing stress and connections, and then proper sleep. Mental workouts. Mental works. This is something that anyone, like a student or an older adult, can be focused on. Of course, students are constantly doing mental workouts because they're studying and they're doing projects, and so all of that will qualify. For anybody who's not in school, it could be pretty much anything that challenges the brain. A lot of times we talk about crossword puzzles or jumbles and things like that. It doesn't have to be that. It could be any kind of project or work that you're doing, learning a new skill, learning a language, playing an instrument, anything that takes a bit of mental acuity, and finding purpose. Of course, like if you're volunteering for something, that helps. And I like to say, practice doesn't necessarily make perfect because none of us get to perfect, but it makes progress. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that means. There are a lot of books, as I mentioned, written about brain health and how to improve memory and stuff like that. This one gentleman who wrote this book on brain rules has kind of an interesting quote, and it's about the importance of repeated information. So the repeated exposure to information over time is better than a cramming session or jamming it all in at once. And that could be for students, of course, but it's also for any kind of decision that we're making that, maybe we need to pause and take a step back and work on it a little bit. It's good. Cramming, we know students do it all the time. It can be good for short-term memory if you cram right before a test. The problem is it's very hard to make connections when you're cramming because you just have all that little pieces of data. But if you haven't repeated the information to yourself over time, it's hard to figure out how it all works together and brings it together in some kind of coherent way. Cramming can also lead to all-nighters, which we're going to talk about a little later because sleep is so important. And skipping sleep is never good. It leads to decreased alertness. It has been shown in research studies to lead to poor academic outcomes, and sometimes students have to resort to that. If you can not resort to it, it's all the better. So what works when it comes to studying? And again, for older adults, with working on projects, it's what we call spaced repetition. And that is in the classroom, if you're on a Zoom meeting and you just learned something, the best thing to do is review your notes. And then another good thing is to repeat it to maybe a study mate, which that gets your memory, that helps you connect dots. And the more you can repeat over short periods of time and take breaks, the better, versus just cramming it all, as said in the previous slide. Okay, now this is the area that I have the most expertise in as a dietitian. And I often get this question, are there specific foods that provide mental clarity? And we're going to talk more about a balanced diet. I want to start with something that I think is very important because some people know this, but a lot of people don't. There is a brain and heart connection. And risk factors of heart disease are many of the same risk factors for brain decline, Alzheimer's, memory loss. We also know that there's a genetic component to each of these, heart disease and Alzheimer's, but I'm talking about the lifestyle components. These are some of the risk factors for heart disease, but they're also the same risk factors for brain decline. And if that's the case, then what kind of diet will work? Well, a heart healthy diet will work for a brain healthy diet. And we've often heard the diet, the Mediterranean diet. It's really a way of life. The best way to look at this is if you think of the Mediterranean Sea, what are all the countries that are on it? And it's the Mediterranean countries of Greece, Spain, Italy, France, some of those. It's some people say, oh, then that means I can eat as much pizza and pasta that I want. It's actually the foods that are indigenous. And so look at this picture and you see fatty fish and avocados. It would be olives and berries and fruits and nuts and green leafy vegetables. Also, the DASH diet is very similar to the Mediterranean diet, and that's a diet for heart health. So think of a diet of a lot of these different foods, and we'll talk about some of them specifically. If I would, if I were to call out some specific foods in the Mediterranean diet, I would say in general, fatty fishes, and a couple times a week is really great if you can, because they have the omega-3 fatty acids, and a good part of our brain is made up of those fatty acids. I would say berries for flavonoids, which are linked to helping with reduced inflammation. On their own, they're not going to, provide everything you need, but as part of a Mediterranean diet. Broccoli, green leafy vegetables, any kind of vegetables. Mom was right, eat your vegetables. They provide all kinds of good things. Lutein is a nutrient that has been linked to memory. Eggs also provide that. And then we'll talk about nuts. Now, in our dining halls, we don't have peanuts and tree nuts, but if you got them on your own, there would be a good source of healthy fats and of protein. A couple other things would be some beverages. We know caffeinated beverages help with alertness, and those are good, but do those in moderation. Of course, probably in the beginning of the day, not at the end of the day, unless you're doing an all-nighter, and we already talked about that's probably something we don't want you to do. And also, lean to green tea. It's got it has a little bit of caffeine, and it has theanine, and it provides kind of this calm alertness, if you can kind of think of like a meditation state, but it still allows you to be alert. Both of uh, these tea and coffee might help. And then to pull it all together in a plate would be kind of this healthy plate of half your plate of fruits and vegetables, whole grains for a quarter of the plate, and then lean proteins for the rest of the quarter of the plate. And to make sure that you're well hydrated, and we often talk about water as being the beverage of choice. The third focus area is exercise. We know exercise is great for the brain. We know it's great for the mood. It's for so many things. And I love this quote again by the author of Brain Rules. Physical activity is cognitive candy. It just keeps us going. It is it's so much the heart and soul of being able to clear our mind. And if you can do that, what's king? Probably aerobic exercise is king, and close behind that is going to be strength training. Either is good. And going out for a walk, just being outside is what is really important, and it helps reduce stress. How much to do? Kind of depends on what level of exercise you do right now. And if you're someone who walks every day for 60 minutes, keep it up. And if you're just starting out slowly, start out slowly with maybe 30 minutes a couple times a week. And just really going out in nature, walking in nature is just wonderful. And as we're this time of year, it's just beautiful. Listen to the birds and see the trees, kind of the buds come about. It's just a perfect time to start. Fourth on our list is managing stress and maintaining social connections. I'm really not going to talk much about this except to say one of the best things to do if you're stressed is to unplug from social media. If you can get into some relaxation routine, all the better. Yoga, meditation, proper breathing, all of those things work. And figuring out a way to maintain social connections without social media. With friends, as we're coming out of the pandemic, of course, social distancing and wearing masks is important. As much as you can, figure out other ways to connect with friends and family. Sleep is number 5, so important. We know students don't get enough sleep. We know as we get older, sometimes sleep can be difficult. Sleep is so restorative. I think people, sometimes I hear from students, oh, it's just a waste of time. Well, it's not a waste of time. It's really, you got to build sleep into your plan. It helps you cope and reduce stress, but this middle bullet tells it all for most people. It improves concentration, regulates your mood, sharpens your judgment, and helps with decision making. If you knew that one thing would do all of that, wouldn't you do that? Get proper sleep. Um, it's so important. I read a study that said that if you didn't get proper sleep and were driving, it's very similar to driving when you've had something to drink. Never a good thing. Get proper sleep, don't skip it. Try to stick to a sleep routine. And here's a couple of things you can do. Try not to procrastinate anything. And that's as a student or as an adult, make a plan. Make a plan and you're going to sleep better. Establish good sleep routine and kind of stick to it. And that means during the week, even on weekends. Try to avoid caffeinated beverages right before bedtime. I also say, and this is what urologists sometimes say, pee right before you go to bed, so you don't have to break your sleep if you have to get up in the middle of the night. Turn off your electronics. Get into a good habit with your cell phone. With don't be texting right before bed. Make your room dark and quiet. Wear a mask or earplugs if you need to, and read something light before bed, not something that's going to scare you or cause you to panic. Just something light, maybe like People magazine. The summary of all these things is do things that make you learn, encourage you to learn. As students, you're doing it all the time. For older people, learning new skills, having a purpose. Number 2, eating well. Focus on meals more than snacks, I would say. Eat your veggies. Stay connected with people in a safe way, socially distancing, and manage stress, yoga, meditation, and stay active. Um, and figure out some good exercise routine and get a good night's sleep. Whatever it takes, it's a really good idea. Rather than maybe pointing out a specific food, I will say, well, actually, I may say one specific food. If you're doing anything with high intensity caffeine and calories, like energy drinks, that are going to be, that is going to upset sleep, and it sometimes can be counterproductive even when you're working on studying and a project. I think you got to really be careful with looking at the ingredients there. And I would say what I like to recommend is for anyone to get in the habit of eating meals, planned meals versus lots of snacks, and not that you have to cut down on carbohydrates. Make sure your diet is filled with protein, carbohydrates, and fat, not just heavy on snacky carbs, I would say, because those can make you sleepy. And of course, we didn't even talk about alcohol, but that is something that in in too much can be detrimental to being able to focus and brain health.
Okay, perfect. There's always, for the last several years, there's been a lot of talk about superfoods or beverages that help with reducing brain fog. Is there truth to this?
Yeah, that is a good question, and you see it everywhere. All these superfoods, whether it's brain fog or heart health. I would say that there does tend to be those foods, omega-3 fatty acid foods, so the kind of fatty fish and the walnuts, nuts. Walnuts have had the most research done of the nuts, so I kind of say walnuts would be would be good things to include in the diet. And then also the green leafy vegetables, there's been a lot of research on that, as well as on the berries and the other, other fruits and vegetables that will be anti-inflammatory. And again, that's the heart health and the brain health kind of go together. So I would say those foods in general, um, not necessarily there's going to be one food, like turmeric or cinnamon or cumin, all often come up. I just personally, I guess I wouldn't recommend any of those supplements necessarily, and would rather recommend a healthy diet with snacks in between every so often.
All right, perfect. And one last question, just to summarize, what would a day of eating look like for anyone who's aiming for nutritional balance and mental clarity?
That's a great question. I would say, of course, it differs for everyone because some people are night owls, some people are early birds, and I would say starting out with a nice breakfast. It doesn't have to be a farmer's breakfast, but something that kind of gets you settled so that you're not stuffed, and at the same time you can concentrate because you're not hungry. That could be oatmeal, it could be fruit, it could be some kind of nut butter on toast. It could be eggs. Eggs are a good one because they provide protein, and they have been linked to a little bit of I think memory might be a good word, but mostly because it keeps you satiated. And then I would say when you're starting to feel that you need more is when you should have lunch. And then that could be, it could be a mini version of what you have for dinner. Everyone's a little bit different. But if you have a protein food, and again, if you're vegetarian or vegan, you just have plant proteins, and get enough vegetables, include salads and a little bit of lean cheese and stuff like that. And then for dinner, in U.S. diet is usually tends to make that a little bit bigger, and Mediterranean, the afternoon meal is a little bit bigger. But I would say you can do very similar things with that, with half a plate of vegetables, a quarter of a plate of lean proteins, and a quarter of a plate of whole grains, and really have a snack in between if you need it to bridge to the meal. But don't feel like you have to have energy bars throughout the whole day unless you need it, was what I would recommend.
All right, thank you. This has been very informative, and I think we all can walk away with some great information on mental clarity and brain health. So thank you again.